This is Superintendent Roger Rindo. I'm joined today by our Board President, Dr. Rick Roadhouse, our Director of Curriculum and Instruction, John Flannery, and our Director of Student Services, Dianna Cadrich. We're pleased to share with you our back-to-school plan. Today you're going to learn a little bit more about our plans, our work towards mitigation and safety strategies, how we're handling transportation, how we're handling food service, and how our health safety guidelines are designed to keep our children safe regardless of the setting that they're in. I want you to know that this has been a process that's gone on for over 2 months. Decisions have been made with your input, with conversations with the board, in partnership with the community. We recognize that this is a highly emotional situation. Nothing's been easy about COVID since we left school on March 12th last year. But I want you to know that we're working hard, and as a team and as a community, we will continue to get through this together. Dr. Roadhouse is going to come on now and share a little bit more about the foundation of the planning process.
Thank you, Dr. Rindo. I'm Rick Roadhouse, President of the School Board. On behalf of the entire school board, I want to assure you that we are committed to the health and safety of all students, families, and employees in the Commonwealth Area School District as we work together to plan for the continued education of your children. We've been hearing from a lot of people through the surveys, emails, phone calls, and meetings about your thoughts and concerns about the health crisis we are facing in our community. Thank you to everyone who has engaged with us as we strive together to meet and integrate the needs of everyone in our community. It's so important to get our kids back to school. That's where they learn best. It's also the place that best promotes their social, emotional, and physical development. It's also important for our community and our parents who need to get back to work. That's part of the equation. At the same time, there are lots of people, adults and students, who have underlying health conditions that, if they were exposed and contracted this disease, could truly be life-threatening. We've heard from those people, and we need to take care of their needs as well. In this presentation, you'll hear about 3 options that the district is planning for your children in their return to school. As you hear about what's going on, listen to what the options are and consider what are the health needs for your children and how these options can best meet those health needs for your children and your family. Also think about the educational opportunities in these models and how those can best be met for your children as well. As a school board, we ask the administration to engage in their planning by following 5 guiding principles. The first guiding principle is to consider the health and safety of all students and staff. It's clear we're concerned about student safety. We also want to emphasize the health and safety of our staff. Because if our teachers and the people who take care of your children get sick and aren't able to be there in school, we can't have school. So we need to integrate the concerns and the needs for our staff as well. We also ask them to consider the social and emotional support for students, staff, and families. It's especially important today to take care of those needs and take care of each other that way. Of course, number 3, focusing on quality teaching for all of our students is paramount in this. And you'll see in the models the consideration is given to good teaching and good learning. Number 4, engagement of the community, family, and the staff. And we've been doing that. We've been hearing from people. Your ideas from the community and from all of you have shaped our thinking and our decision making very much. And lastly, budget implications. We need to be able to afford to do what we can do here for your children. It's so important to remember that the risk of spreading COVID-19 is not just a school issue. It truly is a community issue. I've been talking with our mayor, and we're working together to collaborate. How can we best promote healthy behavior in our community so that our kids can come into school healthy and remain healthy? We need to be working on this all together. On behalf of the school board, I would like to thank Dr. Rindo and the entire administration and all of the staff and teachers who have been working so hard, both since this whole situation began, but also moving forward now as we plan for your children's return to school. So much care and concern has been going into this planning, And they've been putting together a good plan. It's a good one, and we're trying to keep kids safe and keep the education going. And thank you for your engagement with us as we plan for your children's return to school.
The plans that you're going to hear more about today were designed with a high degree of input. We asked families for their feedback on our remote learning strategies. We took that feedback, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and we've used it to inform our planning for the fall. This plan is also designed with a high degree of flexibility. You will see that you have options for your children. Those options can be based on your desired health safety needs as well as your child's learning needs. But before we get further into those options, I want you to know two things. First, we remain committed to our non-negotiable to serve the needs of all kids in any of these settings. What that means is if your child is a student with a disability, we will serve that student's needs regardless of the option that you choose. And all of our student services supports will be available to your children in any of these options. That means our counselors, our social workers, our school psychs, and other resources will be available to you and your family regardless of the option that you choose. I also want you to know that when the board approved these options, they also approved us to continue the development of what we're calling a face-to-face cohort model. It still brings kids in grades K through 8 to school every day, but it continues to restrict the movement of cohorts in the building. It's designed to reduce even greater than the amount of face-to-face social contacts that we have. We continue to develop that plan, and if necessary, we will be able to implement that seamlessly in a transition from a traditional face-to-face model. That looks a little bit different at the high school, where half of our students would come to school every other day, and in the afternoons, our kids would be learning virtually, sometimes synchronously in real time with teachers, and sometimes independently. Now John Flannery and Dianna Cadrich are going to go through each of these models in a bit more detail for you. If you have questions on any of these models, please reach out to them and they'll be able to answer them.
Hello, I'm John Flannery. I'm the privilege of being the Director of Instruction here in the Oconomowoc Area School District. I'll be starting my 7th year in this role, and today I'd like to talk to you a bit about our face-to-face model with our mitigation measures. So our face-to-face model is going to resemble traditional instruction as students knew it prior to March 13th. What will be different is a heavier emphasis on mitigation strategies within those 8 buildings. For today's purpose, those mitigation measures won't be specifically laid out. Our building principals are working with our site building leadership teams to really define those, but some examples of those mitigation measures will be things like how students come into the building at drop-off, how students leave the building, hallway passing times, hand sanitizer that's available as students come into buildings, through hallways and into classrooms. The way that we treat bus routes, the way that we treat lunchroom will be definitely a heavier focus on different measures that we can keep students safe and as distant as possible during those times of transition. But when you think about what will happen in core classrooms, it would largely resemble what students are used to and students experienced prior to March 13th. Within our face-to-face model, with our mitigation measures, a few other items that I think parents should really be aware of. We're going to make sure that all of our teachers 5th through 12th grade have their core curriculum in a platform called Canvas. Canvas is a content management system used in a lot of online settings across our country. Canvas will allow us and our teachers, if we had to move into a remote setting due to a number of reasons, whether the classroom has to move into quarantine, whether we had to move into emergency remote instruction, a teacher should be able to transition then into those remote settings and having their content all in Canvas at that point. That would be different than where we were at prior to March or after March 13th, when many of our teachers were using platforms like Google Classroom or Seesaw. Another strategy that we'll be using, even in the face-to-face model with these measures, would be technology devices for all students. So all students, as we know, 4th through 12th grade, have a device, a Google Chromebook that they are using. But also for our youngest students, we'll make sure that all students are having their own device. They'll just make sure that devices aren't being shared on a regular basis between students. At this point, I'd like to talk about our second model by introducing Dianna Cadrich, who's our Director of Student Services, who will be sharing a bit more about that model.
Hi, my name is Dianna Cadrich. I'm the Director of Student Services here in Oconomowoc School District. Today I'm going to be chatting with you all about the physically distanced model, which is an opportunity for families kindergarten through 6th grade to be able to come to school for a portion of the day face-to-face, but really in a an opportunity for families that are looking for a more physically distanced and smaller group size model to have that opportunity to come to school still, but feel safe about additional mitigation measures and physically distanced options. So what that looks like is students would be assigned to a classroom teacher, a typical classroom size, but it would be split in half. So half the students would come in the morning and half the students would come in the afternoon. The time within the school day would look about approximately 3 hours, and the classroom teachers would be focusing on those core academics, so literacy, numeracy, and then also some time for classroom connections, any extension or intervention opportunities depending on the needs of the student, sometimes for assessments, and some hands-on learning things that would support the independent practices that were happening in the time that your child's at home. The learning or practice at home would be additional practice around numeracy and literacy, some guided opportunities for independent exploration and project-based learning opportunities in those science and social studies, and then also specials like music, gym, and art. Those things would be facilitated at home. This instructional model is 4 days per week, with then Fridays being off. The opportunities, depending on the number of students enrolling, it may be that your child would not participate in the physically distanced model at their own home school. Instead, they could be at any of the sites across the district, depending on enrollment. This model requires that parents transport for drop-off and pickup. And one of the things that we're planning for is that students would be able to be coming to school maybe a little bit before or a little bit after the rest of the student body. So again, allowing for additional safety measures and that mitigation of remaining physically distanced from the rest of the student body. One of the things that we're looking into is if you are a parent that has given the okay to share your directory information, we're planning on providing kind of that cohort of group of families that are participating in the physically distanced model, giving the information to each other so you could maybe arrange for some ride sharing, or also think up creatively about having those times when your child's not in school to be sharing some of the instruction and really working together to facilitate a community of learning outside of the face-to-face time during the school day. Now I'd like to reintroduce John Flannery. He's going to be speaking about the Oconomowoc Virtual Learning Community.
I'm excited to share the Oconomowoc Virtual Learning Community as an option for families for the 2021 school year. The virtual option for families will run from 4K through 12th grade. It will encompass all of our core content areas. Students will have the opportunity to participate in literacy, math, science, and social studies, those core areas. They'll also have an opportunity to participate in elective options as well, both in a K-6 and a 7-12 model. It will be the Oconomowoc Area School District teachers who will be staffing all of those positions. At the K-6 level, a student's day would roughly look like a 3 to 4 hour online setting, both with a mixture of synchronous or online work, combination of teachers working with students in those fashion, but also an opportunity where students would be working in an offline fashion where there would be independent tasks associated with their work. At a 7-12 level, students would have an opportunity to participate in, again, the same core options of English, math, science, and social studies. We would have elective offerings for students that would replicate what they would take in a traditional face-to-face model. Options again in music, phy-ed, health, science, technology, engineering, and math, agriculture, natural resources. In those offerings, though, those would be most likely run through a third-party vendor, an online curriculum solution, where our teachers would be serving more as learning coaches, and the students would be able to take those courses at their own pace. Those courses would be NCAA accredited, with Oconomowoc area teachers facilitating and supporting. We also want families to understand in the online option, while every family experienced supporting their child through virtual learning for 2.5 months from March until June, we really are looking to make substantial improvements in this model heading to the 2021 school year. Some of those improvements would be a heavier focus on active engagement in that learning. That's going to look like more synchronous or online sessions between student and teacher, between student and student. We also want to make sure that there's more checks for understanding or more formative assessment. In emergency remote learning, there was a lot of acknowledgement of work and putting kids in tasks for them to show and demonstrate work towards those goals, where in our upcoming virtual learning model, we want to make sure that teachers are giving kids that really good feedback they need, and then spending time in delivering maybe more formative or summative assessments for students. As far as participating in clubs and activities, one question that we often get asked is, can I participate in the virtual community during the day, and could I still participate in an Oconomowoc High School athletic or co-curricular? And as long as those athletics and co-curriculars are moving in the manner that they are, our students in virtual learning community can definitely participate in those. That is a huge benefit compared to enrolling in an outside OASD virtual learning setting. One of the last components of the Oconomowoc virtual community that we want families to understand as you make the decision is that we are looking at this really to be a long-term solution for our students. We know that this is definitely at this point a response to our COVID-19 pandemic, and to help support families as they make a decision on what measure or what model seems to make most sense. But we also want people to know that as they position their students in this, that we see this as an opportunity to grow virtual learning across our district and to continue making sure we're striving for excellence in this virtual model. So families should understand that this would be a solution that could be multiple years for their child.
You've heard that a lot of what will happen in our face-to-face setting, or even in our physically distanced setting, will look similar to very traditional instructional practices that your child received last year. However, there are going to be some things that are different in our schools than there were on March 12th when we closed for the school year. I want to spend some time sharing with you the mitigation strategies that will be in place, regardless of whether your student is in a face-to-face setting or in a physically distanced setting. Those strategies include cleaning and sanitizing, reducing close social contacts, and having proper and, in fact, increased ventilation in our schools. All of our buildings will be cleaned and sanitized daily and nightly. We'll be using CDC-approved products in this process. Throughout the day, we'll also be sanitizing high-touch surfaces so that students who are putting their hands on railings, on door handles, and staff, etc., will have disinfected spaces during the day. Hand sanitizer will be available in all main entrances, in every one of our classrooms, and in our cafeterias. We'll keep as many doors open in the interior of the building during the day to reduce the amount of high-touch surfaces. And finally, bubblers will be turned off, but water bottle fill stations will remain operational. If you send your child with a water bottle, they'll have the opportunity to stay hydrated throughout the day. We'll also be working hard to reduce close social contacts as a way to stay safe, to stay open. All of our main office areas will be fitted with plexiglass, because it will be impossible to have conversations outside of 6 feet sometimes in those offices. All of our staff will be required to wear face masks or face shields, their option between the two, when 6 feet of social distancing can't be maintained. In addition, we're strongly encouraging students in grades 3 through 12 to wear face masks when they are working inside of 6 feet of their peers. This year, we'll be limiting visitor access to the building in significant ways. This might be a challenge because it will mean likely no grandparents' day. It will likely mean that you won't be able to come and eat lunch with your children. Visitors to the building will likely be limited to vendors and contractors who might need to be in the building, and they'll be subject to the same mitigation factors to be able to enter the building as our staff, and they'll too be required to wear masks at any time. Our morning drop-off and our afternoon dismissal processes will change. You'll learn more about that from your building principal, as some of the specifics will be different from building to building. But we'll be ensuring that we have more entrances supervised in the morning to reduce the amount of students coming into any entrance, and we'll be staggering dismissal and be sending students out to buses and to cars through multiple exits to achieve that same purpose. In addition, recess will be restructured at our intermediates and our elementary schools to reduce the number of students and the number of grade levels at recess and the amount of interaction between those grade levels. Finally, we'll be working hard to ensure that we have quality ventilation in all of our schools. The American Society of Heating, Refrigerating, and Air Conditioning Engineers has set a standard of at least 10 cubic feet per minute of fresh outdoor air recirculated per student in any space. You'll see here that that minimum standard is higher than likely any area that your child will be in after school or on weekends, probably with the exception of beauty salons and fitness centers who have a higher standard than schools and classrooms. That minimum standard will actually be expanded upon for the majority of the school year, except for on days when it's very, very warm or extremely cold. We'll keep air handling units open further. It's a way for us to have energy efficiency and use the outside air to our benefit. That air will come in, it will be mixed with recirculated air from inside the school. It will be filtered, and then it will be recirculated throughout the areas of the building. While our systems vary a bit from school to school, every one of our schools has a design that will at least meet the minimum of fresh air, and in fact will largely exceed that minimum standard. You heard Dr. Roadhouse say that the decision was made based on the current health status at the time when the board decided on June 30th to offer these models. We will continue to monitor our local health data, both based on information from the Waukesha County COVID case dashboard, as well as information that we'll be receiving on a daily basis from our schools. We'll be monitoring by school the number of students' absences reported for flu-like symptoms, as well as staff absences. We'll monitor any active COVID cases by building and the number of students and staff who may be in quarantine as a result of direct exposure. Our goal is to reduce the area of limitation or perhaps closure to maybe the classroom setting or a grade level setting or maybe ultimately a school without having to close down the entire district. To do so, we need to monitor data at the building level as well as at the community level. This is an example of what monitoring health data at the local level looks like. This is taken from the Waukesha County COVID dashboard, and we've built, based on our local data on that dashboard, several slides that we'll be monitoring. The slide on the left reports the total number of reported cases of COVID in communities that we serve from Waukesha County. That includes the city of Oconomowoc, the town of Oconomowoc, the village of Lac La Belle, the village of Oconomowoc Lake, and the village of Summit. As of late this week, we had 133 total reported cases of COVID among those municipalities. The slide on the right reports increases in reported cases by day since July 2nd. What we simply do is take the total reported cases and subtract from the previous day and monitor those new cases. As we consider community spread, those new cases are an important component for us. We also recognize that that potentially is not all of the new cases in our community. We know that research tells us that between asymptomatic and pre-symptomatic and undiagnosed cases, the numbers on the slide on the right potentially could be much higher. As we talk about staying safe to stay open, we'll be monitoring each of these pieces of data along with the individual school pieces of data to make any decisions with our school board going forward. There's a number of health safety guidelines that we'd ask you to consider. Primarily, and first and foremost, please, if your child doesn't feel well, keep them home. If our staff doesn't feel well, we'll ask them to stay home. Teachers have a hard time staying home. They want to be with their kids. They want to make sure that kids are getting the very best. We'll let them know that there's nothing heroic about coming to school sick. The best thing that any of us can do is staying home when we don't feel well. We'll also ask you, when you call your child in, to give us the reason for their absence so that we can track on our dashboard the number of children who are being called in sick for flu-like symptoms. Students and staff who are symptomatic will be evaluated in an isolation room identified in every school. It's important that we have a separate room for this purpose so as we don't cross-contaminate our health room. Our health room sees students for lots of reasons, for medications, for lost or lost teeth, for abrasions on the playground. And so we will have a designated area that's staffed by a separate individual who will help evaluate symptomatic students and staff. We also want you to know that if your child or if a staff member tests positive, everyone who has been in close social contact will be notified in a letter by our Director of Nursing Services, Christy Deal. Even if your child was in contact but was not considered a close social contact, they were a low-risk contact, you will get a letter indicating that your child was in contact with someone who was diagnosed positive for COVID. Consistent with county health guidelines, if a child has had direct exposure to COVID-19, they'll be required to quarantine for 14 days. Whether that exposure occurred in the school or outside of the school will continue to require a 14-day quarantine. Also consistent with county health guidelines, a negative test does not shorten that required quarantine. A student who tests negative on day 7 could test positive on day 8. I want you to know that we are working currently through many different scenarios of how that quarantine will still allow a student to be served educationally. Please know that when your child's in quarantine, they will continue to have educational services provided to them, potentially in a number of different ways. Finally, secondary exposure will not require a quarantine. Secondary exposure might look like this. Your child comes home, your family has dinner together, you watch a movie or you play a board game, and you find out that someone else in your family was in direct contact with an individual who tested positive for COVID. Just because your child was around that individual in your family who was exposed does not mean that they are required to quarantine. We will ask that you monitor their symptoms, but they can continue to attend school. Busing will also look a little bit different this year. We will sanitize our buses at the end of every day, and we will also spot sanitize high touch points in between routes. You'll notice that there's a vinyl barrier between the driver and the passenger as they climb the stairs. We will load buses from the back to the front to reduce the amount of face-to-face contact that students have with one another as they're walking down the aisle. We'll also ask you to send your child, when it gets cooler, with a sweater or a light jacket, because until we get very cold, we will keep the windows open and the roof hatches open to increase ventilation on our buses. And finally, while it's really fun for a child to bring a friend home for a sleepover, in order to maintain a stronger ability for contact tracing, we will not have any guest riders on our buses for the 2021 school year. We also continue to make plans to provide food service in a safe way this year. There are many different ways, as you see on the screen, that we're mitigating factors in food service. All of our food service providers will be masked and be wearing gloves. Some of the kinds of foods that used to be self-served will be prepackaged. Mustard and ketchup will still be available, but it won't be in those large pump jugs, it'll be in individual packets. We'll be seating in our cafeterias differently, spaced out, using additional seating, serving in ways that keep students from standing in line front to back in a way that might expose them. Our tables will be designated by grade level, and will be used in staggered manners, and they'll be cleaned and sanitized in between uses. Aramark, our food service provider, will be offering a morning snack pack which will be served in classrooms so children won't be sitting in the cafeteria eating breakfast. And finally, all of our codes will be on barcodes this year. Students will not be typing their name in to reduce the number, or the number in, to reduce the number of touches throughout the food service area. Finally, there are a few dates that will be important. On the 17th, we will have released an expanded plan document that gives a bit more information on the plans that were explained to you here this morning, as well as the mitigation strategies that I've explained. Please review that. That document will continue to be expanded and continue to be revised as the weeks and months move forward. Those revisions will be posted to our website. On Monday, July 20th, we will open our online registration. Please consider the document, what you've learned here in this presentation, as you make final decisions that you think are best for your child and best meets your family needs. That online registration closes on August 6th. That's an important date because after that date, we will be making decisions around staffing to ensure that all of the options are staffed appropriately and that quality learning can happen in a quality setting. I want to thank you for the time that you spent with us. I want to thank you for the support that you provided over the 3 months that we were in remote learning last spring. I want to thank you for your constant feedback. I've been bothering you a lot this summer. You've heard from me almost every week. I appreciate your patience. And more importantly, I appreciate the trust that you put in us as a district. Your children are your most precious commodity, and we don't take that responsibility lightly. We'll continue to be in touch. If you have questions about anything that you've heard here today or on any other topic, please don't hesitate to reach out. Have a great day, everyone.